It seems like when carnivores and people on ketogenic diets want to go out to eat, the very short list of acceptable places are barbecue restaurants. This, despite the fact that it's an open secret that the vast majority of barbecue restaurants put an overwhelming amount of sugar into the various rubs that they put onto their meats. And when I say overwhelming amounts, I'm talking about equal parts in volume of sugar to the rest of the spices that go into those rubs. Still, many are willing to take the risk or just enjoy the once in a while treat as a nice night out that is still more or less carnivore or keto friendly. And while I personally have had myself knocked out of the ketogenic state multiple times before I figured out what was going on, whenever I'd go get barbecue restaurants are still a favorite for people on animal-based diets of all kinds. And almost certainly, if you're on a carnivore or ketogenic diet, your favorite dish that you're going to find there is probably going to be the brisket. Why? Because brisket is beef. It comes from the ruminant animal. It's very nutritious because it is the meat of a ruminant animal. But what if I told you that barbecue restaurants are lying to you about brisket? What if I told you that barbecue restaurants are putting on their menu something that they're saying is brisket, but is something else entirely different? Think about that for a moment and let me know how you feel about that in the comments, please. Because I have it on good authority from somebody that I know who is very well connected in the beef industry in the American Southwest and in Texas and other places, that barbecue restaurants are putting on their menu something that they're calling brisket, but is something else entirely. And it has to do with the fact that cows just don't have that many briskets on them. The simple fact of the matter is there's only a limited amount of brisket you can get from a cow. A brisket is a very specific cut of meat, and it's for sale at almost every grocery store that you'll go to in any place with any real amount of barbecue culture in it. I'm from Portland, Oregon originally. I don't remember seeing too many briskets at the local Safeway or Fred Meyer up there. But here in Oklahoma, where I live now, you will find brisket at every grocery store except maybe Aldi. Every grocery store has brisket if they're available. So here's the scenario for you. You walk into a barbecue restaurant, and what do you see? You see you see a menu full of all the classic barbecue items. Pork ribs and burnt ends maybe, pulled pork, and two kinds of brisket, typically sliced and chopped. My contact told me that he had been visiting another state and was at one of the high-profile barbecue places in that state and saw the brisket flying off the shelf, and the restaurant was packed. So he finally had to ask the cook, "Where do you get all this brisket from?" And he just sort of gave the chef gave him the side-eyed look and said, "It's not actually brisket." So what are they selling? It's not chuck roast. That's the usual go-to if you're familiar with barbecue culture. Poor man's brisket is chuck roast because chuck usually goes for a higher price per pound than brisket, but it comes in a much smaller size, so it's significantly more affordable. They're selling us something called a beef arm roast, not to be confused with the beef shank. That is a different cut from the similar part. The rancher I buy from has a beef arm roast that he labels as a bone-in sirloin steak. If you know anything about the anatomy of a cow, the giant roast that that's various sirloin cuts like picanha and sirloin steaks and the rest are cut from, does not have a bone running through the middle of it. It's a beef arm roast. And on the screen right now is a beef arm roast that I bought from them, and I decided to test this theory. Are barbecue restaurants really serving you beef arm roasts instead of brisket? Now, I'm not saying all of them are doing this. I have certainly been to small mom and pop barbecue restaurants where I could see them taking a full brisket out of their cooler that had been cooked and, slicing it and chopping it and all the rest right in front of me. But that's not all of them. So here is first, of course, you saw the beef arm roast that I had. Now, what I decided to do is I went to a local grocery store and I bought a pre-trimmed brisket for two reasons. A pre-trimmed. One, I'm not very good at trimming brisket. I just am not. At least not to the level that you would have at a professional restaurant. If they were serving you real brisket, you want to have brisket that's trimmed professionally. So I bought a brisket that was pre-trimmed. It cost a little more to do that, but it was fine. When I trim a brisket for my family, I make it aerodynamic so it'll cook evenly, and I cut maybe some really thick fat off of it, but otherwise I like it nice and fatty. That's kind of the point when you're on an animal-based diet, is to get those animal fats. So I bought a pre-trimmed brisket, and I seasoned it exactly the way Texas barbecue would be. Salt and black pepper. Yes, I know black pepper is loaded with oxalates. I'm fine with black pepper. It doesn't usually bother me. I also gave most of the brisket away after it was done. My family and I had a little bit of it, and I gave the rest to some relatives. I cooked it exactly the way you would cook a brisket normally, and it turned out magnificent. It was a great brisket. Then I took the arm roast, and I seasoned it exactly the way you would with the brisket. I cut the bone out, and I'll put some footage up here of what it looked like while it was cooking. But I seasoned it exactly the same way. And the end result was a little drier than I liked because I'd never cooked one of these before. They're leaner than a brisket is. And the reason they can probably get away with this at restaurants is because it looks like a brisket flat. I'll do a video on the anatomy of a brisket, but there are two main components to a brisket, the point and the flat. The flat is the leaner part of it. It's the, well, flatter, more narrow part of the brisket as opposed to the thick, fatty, pointy end. So on your screen, I'll put here now, side by side, the end result after I sliced them. Here is footage of on one side, you'll see the beef arm roast. We'll put it on the right side of the screen, and on the left side of the screen, you'll see the brisket. Side by side, you can clearly see the difference. I'm showing you the flat of both. Again, you can easily see the difference. But here's the thing. I know for a fact that I've had beef arm roast, meat that looked exactly like that given to me at barbecue restaurants. I know for a fact because there are barbecue restaurants that I used to go to frequently before I started learning how to barbecue my own meat. And I don't know if that bothers me or not, really, because beef arm roast, they're fairly lean, but they're fine. Actually, they have a little more collagen in them than brisket does, which is good. It's not a bad thing. But I don't like the false advertising. So I'm curious, have you seen this before at other barbecue restaurants? You know, because the way they get away with this is that the kind of people who go to barbecue restaurants on a regular basis aren't the people making it themselves. Why would you spend $60, $70 on dinner for four at a barbecue place? Or more, frankly, these days, when you can spend less than that on a brisket yourself and cook it yourself on the machine you have at home. Unless you don't have the equipment to do it. It takes a pellet grill or an offset smoker or something to do the same job. And don't even get me started on the quality differences, by the way, when you do it yourself versus even some of the better barbecue restaurants, because most of them, their meat doesn't taste smoky at all. That's another rant for another time, though. So, side by side, have you seen the meat from the arm roast before at a local restaurant and passed off as brisket? I know for a fact that I have. And I didn't realize it until I decided to test what I had been told by my contact in the meat industry about this. I'm curious what you think of this. Let me know in the comments, please. Like and subscribe if you haven't. It really does help. Share this on social media if you can. That really helps as well. I'd love to get the attention of some of the higher profile pitmaster barbecue channels on this so that they can test this themselves, because I film this stuff on my phone. I don't have a $2,000 digital camera to do this with. All my digital cameras suck, so my phone is as good as it's going to get. But share this on social media if you can. I'm Anthony Stine, and thanks for watching today.